Hey friends, welcome back to Thrive Online Healing Podcast. This is episode 60, and we are talking about taking responsibility for your life.
Yes. I think this is something we could all use.
Yeah. It's just like, it's a concept I don't think that we dive into and think about a lot, right? Like we think of ourselves, like we just correlate being an adult as being responsible. And like not even understanding like what does that even mean? What does taking responsibility for my life even mean and look like? And then for me, my brain wraps taking responsibility for my life with blame or fault.
Yeah. I think that when we think of responsibilities, it kind of looks like this list of things we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think of fault a little bit differently. I kind of think of that as sort of this cause and effect, right? Like maybe the fault being sort of that consequence of an action of some sort. Yeah. So we think of responsibilities as sort of I was trying to separate this as like a proactive, right? And then fault sort of is that more reactive. Something is happening as a result of our environment, right? Or something's happening to me.
And we were talking about this episode before we jumped on to record, and my brain kind of grabbed onto the concept of responsibility is taking responsibility for your life and all the results in your life is a very empowered approach, because it's like, yes, this turned out bad and I'm taking responsibility for it. That's on me. But here's my plan to change it, do something different next time. Right. Blame and fault feels like same scenario. I did this action and it went wrong. Blame and fault is more of like a victim mentality way of looking at it. Like, oh, it's my fault. I'm bad. I'm wrong. And we go into like blaming others or feeling sorry for ourselves instead of saying like, okay, how can I fix this and move forward? We just go into that feeling sorry for ourselves or blaming other people.
Right. Yeah. I think that idea of taking responsibility, right? It oftentimes that may be around like if something did go wrong, you're taking kind of those responsibility for your actions. You're making choices to create a specific outcome you're hoping for, right?
Okay, say that one more time.
Okay, so for responsibility, you're taking specific actions to create a specific outcome or an outcome you're hoping for. Yeah. And so it's much more proactive in that sense. Yes. Right. And it's like, okay. And if something went wrong, it's like, okay, so maybe I did make the best decision in there somewhere. You're taking that responsibility, say, okay, I didn't make the best decision or I didn't make the best choice. And so, I am accepting that responsibility as a result of that. But when you leave that window open of it's your responsibility, right? It's your choice. You have control over the situation. Mm-hmm. You also have the control to change it. Mm-hmm. I think that's where that empowerment comes from. It's like, oh, okay, not anywhere in this process. So maybe it's not the outcome I wanted or I was shooting for. If I still keep and hold that responsibility through whatever that cascade, whatever that event was, I still, have that control to change it or to learn from it and pivot, right? Pivot and switch gears. So you didn't give the ball away to somebody else in that process.
Yeah. So my brain, I love when my brain like understands a concept. It almost feels like it's like this flower that finally like unfolds and it's like, oh, okay. Because I've been in 2K since 2K for 2K. It's Stacey Bayman's life coaching program since the end of October. And like, that's her thing, is you take responsibility for everything, right? Like, you don't ever blame the client. If a consult goes poorly, you take responsibility for it. And like, my brain always was like, this just doesn't feel good. Like, them saying no on a consult, how is that my fault? Because I went into that victim mentality of fault and blame instead of like, nope, I'm staying empowered in this. Where is my responsibility lie on this? So I can change the actions next time. And like you just explained it, and my brain's like, oh, I get it. I get it now. I get what responsibility means. And like, it's, I see why it's like such a big deal. Like, if you can move to a place where you're like fully responsible for your life and fully responsible for all the results of your life, like, you truly own your life.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Well, because you are consistently, consciously in it. Right. Yeah. You're making those decisions consistently conscious. So you're not in that autopilot, just like, you know what, whatever happens, happens.
Mm-hmm.
Or, okay, so, I didn't, I don't have a good example, but instead of sort of taking that maybe more of a passive approach, if you will, and then all of a sudden, yeah, you're in a situation you don't want to be in, right? And you're like, oh, well, it's not my fault. It's, John's fault that, he hit me, or, ran into my car, right? And it's like, well, what was your role in that? Or yeah, XYZ. But it's that I also want to say, when we think of fault, it is that victim mentality. And then when we personalize it, right? Oh, well, it was my fault that somebody got sick, right? It was my fault that somebody got injured. It was your fault that this happened. You're giving away that power, you're giving away that control, and if you're blaming yourself, then that can start victim mentality, this whole cycle of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, right? And like, we put this extra layers of pressure and defeat on ourselves because something didn't go right.
Yeah. I kind of got this image of like someone that's fully responsible for their life is living their life with their eyes wide open. Mm-hmm. Right. And they're constantly looking around for solutions to problems. Yes. Right. Like, okay, this happened. I take responsibility for it. I'm looking around, finding solutions, a way to pivot, a way to change, right? Because I own my life and I'm going to create the results I want. Versus someone that's in the blame mentality or fault. It's almost like I was living my life with my eyes closed. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm waiting for someone to tell me what to do. I'm waiting for someone to fix this. I'm not really at fault for anything. It's your fault if it goes bad. And if it does go bad, then I'll blame myself and just feel sorry for myself. And I stay stuck in that because my eyes are closed, so I can't see other options or solutions to problems.
Right. Yeah. I think because of that, there's that distinct difference, right, between responsibility and fault. But I do want to throw out there that can change, right? Yeah. That we can change how we choose to live our life from a responsibility base versus a fault base, or whether you're, have that locus of control, or that, being proactive versus the reactive, or just that passive.
Yeah.
Because I often tell folks, when people will come in, sometimes it gets a little bit tricky, because people will come in and they will ask, okay, what are my expectations? Like, how long is it going to take me to feel better? Right? Like, how long is it going to take for this pain to go away? How long is it going to take for my, mood to balance out? And I tell folks that there are some occasions where things happen overnight, but it is often rare. And that usually when we're talking about health and we're talking about making changes, we often don't find ourselves in that situation overnight. Right. is that oftentimes if people are coming in with a chronic illness, right? High blood pressure, anxiety, stress, diabetes, it's built up over time. And so they come in, in this fault mindset, and they're ready to make changes, right? They're ready to take that responsibility. So I tell folks, I said, you can make those changes and your body is resilient, right? That we can see improvement relatively quickly, depending on how long somebody's been suffering from their condition or symptoms. But it takes time. It takes a little bit of time because it's a new habit you have to create at taking responsibility for your life.
Yeah.
Making those better choices.
Go ahead and go.
So we're talking about making changes and taking that responsibility for our health, but also for our life, taking those, making those active choices, right? It's like we've talked about, going from being that sort of passive, just what is the word? Automatic, right? You're just going in and out. We're living our days, right? You're going to work. You're not actually engaged with your life and with your choices, to taking responsibility and saying, no, actually, I have direct control on, my interactions with other people, my attitudes, my moods, my choices, and in turn, my physical health.
Yeah. So why do you think, I have my answer because I see this with my clients a lot. Why do you think humans are so resistant to taking responsibility for their life?
So what I hear a lot is that it's hard. People just chalk it up to it's hard. And I think that is an excuse.
Yeah, it is.
So what that's a good question. That's usually what when we talk about folks about making changes, the resistance that I get is, it's too hard. But it's not that it's too hard, it's just different than what they're used to doing, right?
Okay. And do you think there's a root cause behind it's hard or that it's different?
So I think it's changing that. Again, I think it's that passive versus reactive, or passive choices versus action-based choices, right? And I also think some components of it is also their support system. And sometimes people don't want to rock the boat, and so if their family and everybody else is making or living a certain lifestyle and you're different, right? You're that fish that's going the opposite way, it feels a lot harder. So then people don't often stick with it or want to make those changes. But I don't think that directly answered your question.
It's okay. So when I coach with my clients, and I have several of them, I'm like, when I tell you that you are fully responsible for your life, everything, fully responsible for it, I'm like, what does your brain offer you up? What thoughts does your brain offer up? And I've had several of them tell me fear. It's super scary to think that they are fully responsible for their lives because they're so afraid of screwing it up, because then it'll be their fault.
Oh, true.
Right?
Yeah, because it's scary to do something different.
Yeah. And it's and so I'm like, well, you're in control of your life. You're fully in control of your life. And their brains are so resistant to that.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's so much easier or safer for us to think that our parents, our religion, our government have control over our lives. Because if it goes wrong, it's their fault and it's not our fault. And I think the root cause of like us being at fault is like that underlying belief that I'm not enough. And if I'm at fault, that's evidence to show that I'm not smart enough, capable enough, strong enough. All the things I'm afraid that might be true about me.
Right. Well, that your brain's trying to find that evidence.
Yeah.
Right. Trying to find that evidence to prove you right. And yeah, I could definitely see that, because if it's something that different, right? This concept that you're in control of your life is a light bulb opportunity for folks, right?
Uh-huh.
Sometimes it can be exciting. It's like, okay, I understand that intellectually, but to play that out, in actions, in choices, in that inner dialogue, that's very, it can be very different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I sympathize with them. I understand when you're introduced to the concept, when you've lived your whole life and our society has agreed that we are not in control and it has agreed that we should think like victims, right?
Yeah.
When you're presented with a concept like you're fully in control of you 100% of the time and all the power lies within you and you're fully responsible for your life, like it's terrifying.
Yeah. Well, because, I don't know where that fear comes from, I guess. But it's the same thing with like, maybe in my mind, it's the same thing of like, when you get new parents, right? And they
Yeah.
bring home that baby and they feel like, okay, I am 100% responsible for keeping this child alive.
Mm-hmm.
And so they take the safety measures, right? They take all the precautions, they do all the things because they're like, this is my responsibility to keep this child alive.
Right.
And then that they hold on to that, right? So even when that child's in their 50s or 60s, parents still hold on to that, right? And even as as a society, we've created this idea that parents are responsible for their kids.
Yeah.
Okay? And at some point they become their own person, right? Yeah. But it's like, okay, that, and then sometimes on the other side, right, the kids are like, oh no, my parents are responsible for me. My parents are responsible for who I grew up to be, right? Like my parents,
yeah, we blame. Yeah.
We blame them. And so then it's like twisting that idea, because now it's like, oh, it's your fault that I turned out this way.
Which is like, I lived in that paradigm most of my life, and it is so painful.
Yeah.
To like live in that powerless place where it's somebody else's fault. You are the way you are. And I always hear like our audience or other people like arguing with these concepts, and I can hear people arguing with like, well, it is. If they'd have been different, I'd have been different. And it's like, maybe not.
Yeah.
But how does that serve you?
Right.
How does that empower you to think that way?
Yeah. Even though it's scary and there's a lot of fear behind making that change and actually taking responsibility for our lives, I hope that it helps people to be empowered to know, that, hey, yeah, so those experiences that you've had from birth to now has influenced you, right? But that's not, you don't have to keep going down that same path, right? Is that, hey, you can wake up today and say, you know what, I'm going to take responsibility of my life. I'm not sure what that's going to look like,
right?
But I'm going to start, now I'm being a little bit more conscious of my choices. And yeah, you've got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Otherwise you continue to be in that victim mentality. Well, it's really hard to move forward. It's really hard to grow as human beings, I think. Or yeah, it's, I don't know, it's not even about, you know, finding your happiness, but being maybe successful in whatever realm, you know, you're looking for in relationships and, you know, finances and family and business. And um, if you're not taking responsibility for your life.
And you know, I think for a long time I thought I wasn't living my purpose. And I was in a job that was sucking the life out of me. And even that word now I can see like, oh, that's a very victim mentality way of saying it, that the job has that much power to do that. Right. But I don't think that that's what it is anymore. I think it's when we live our lives from a passive perspective, that the power is outside of us.
Yeah.
We feel incomplete. We feel like we're just dazing through life and that it rubs our soul the wrong way. But when we can take ownership over our life and realize that we are fully in control, we are fully powerful in our life, it doesn't matter the job or the situation because we're now aligned with ourselves, right? And we're living awake. We're living consciously. So I don't think it's all about pursuing the purpose. It's being conscious and awake and engaging in your own life and taking full responsibility of it.
Yeah.
And not being afraid. I think when I let go of the fear of screwing up my life, right, or being wrong, and saw that there's nothing wrong with being wrong. Like when I could finally like align the worthiness and enoughness that I'm 100% worthy and I cannot add to it or take away from it, right? Then that whole being wrong or screwing things up just became irrelevant because I wasn't worried about not being worthy anymore. It's like, oh, I'm always worthy no matter what mistakes I make, no matter what wrong decisions. But now I just, you know, take responsibility for all the outcomes in my life so I can pivot and change and find different solutions and answers to problems that are going to arise.
Yeah. That's perfect. That's beautifully said. I love that. That you also tied in that it's not about, you know, that finding that our purpose, right, our passion. Because I do have people who ask me, you know, how do they ask this question? I always translate it the same way in my head, but I'm trying to think of how they ask this. But it's like kind of how to find this. It feels like an intangible happiness, if you will. Right. Yeah. And they're like, oh, well, if I could find my purpose, and do and like use my gifts and find that purpose of what I was, you know, put on this earth to do, then I'll, you know, be able to reap the benefits and be happy all the time. It's like, well, I don't think that's entirely true. I don't think that's quite how the world works. But I mean, everybody's experience is a little bit different. But I love how you worded that and how you said that, because it's not about, you know, searching out and finding that purpose. It's about taking that responsibility and understanding how much control you have with all your choices, whether, I don't even know that we can label them, you know, good or bad, but all those experiences, right? Yeah. Whether they're considered mistakes or not, but that you have control of those experiences, right? And you can learn from them and change from them and grow from them. I think that's what creates our, purpose, if you will, I guess. Yeah. At least definitely gives us a different perspective and understanding of how I'm like, how we interact with the world and other humans.
Yeah. And I have 2 points. One I'm going to make about that whole purpose, and it's better there than it is here.
Yeah.
And then the other one is, I knew I was going to forget it. Oh, we'll go over on this one. So if you haven't listened to last episode, the 50-50, you need to stop now and go back and listen to the 50-50. Because here's the deal. Carmen, you are living your purpose, correct?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
It's all rainbows and fairies and happiness all the time.
No.
I finally have found a career that aligns with the fabric of who I am. It is the same. Life is still 50-50. My coach who makes $32 million, still 50-50. Like
Yeah.
there is no end point. There's no purpose. There's no career. There's no you get married and have kids. There's no certain amount of money. There's no house. There's no car that you're ever going to accomplish and then feel happy all the time. That does not exist. Wherever you go, there you are, regardless of the circumstances that change outside of you. So it
Very.
is, yeah, it is like you have to come in line with yourself and take that responsibility. Oh, I remember my second point. Responsibility and power over your life. That is where the happiness comes because you finally feel like you're actually living. That you're spending your time wisely. You're not just in a daze living your life, wasting it. Like you're intentionally living your life, experiencing the 50-50. So here's what my second point was. I hear people, and it drives me insane now. I hear people say all the time, like, well, I have very little control. We cannot control anything outside of us, which sounds so nice, doesn't it? Like, oh, we don't have we don't have any control outside of us, right? And we're all like, yep, yep. Like, I used to say that and believe that, but it is so poisonous. Yeah. Because it reaffirms the fact that we don't have control. And then we spend our lives, if you're a person that says like, oh, I just don't have any control outside of me, it's because you don't have control of you. So you're worried about controlling outside of you and the humans outside of you. Because when you're in control of you and you're fully responsible for you, you give two shits about anything else outside of you. Like, I don't got time to care or think about the other humans and controlling them now that I fully take responsible for me. Like, I'm trying to find solutions to my own problems.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a great point because it does get a little bit tricky when people, when you constantly tell yourself or admit that I only have control over me. I don't have control around, of everybody around me. So yes, so that is true. You have control over you and not everybody else around you. But after a while, your brain might reinterpret that, oh, I don't have control over anything, right? I don't have control over things around me. I don't have control over myself. And yeah, it becomes a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they'll tell me like, I don't have any control over anything outside of me, but me. And I'm like, you don't even have control over you.
Yeah. Let's start at square one. Yeah. Let's start at square one.
Power lies outside of you. I did it. I was there. I'm not judging them. I've been that human. Yeah. But like, it's completely evident in our society that we think that way. Let's use the pandemic. Yeah. Right? You wear a mask, you get the vaccine to protect the other humans. Yeah. Why is their health my responsibility? My health is my responsibility.
Right.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, hey, don't be an asshole. If you're sick, stay at home. You should have been doing that your entire life. Yeah. Like, I should not get a vaccine for other people. I should get a vaccine for me and my health. Like, it's rampant. It's everywhere. Yeah.
Well, I think because it plays into that guilt, right? Yeah, it plays into that guilt. So I have several colleagues who made choices in their practice because of that guilt line and that, fear of spreading the virus, or that fear of, not protecting their patients, right? It's like, well, you have responsibility over your health, they have responsibility over their health, right? Yeah. And I think sometimes, well, for me personally, coming from a space where I really care a lot of people, I really want to help a lot of people, but I've recognized that I can only do so much, right? Like I can't physically help you make your meals every day. I can't make sure you take your supplements every day, right? So that's beyond what I can do as a person or even a practitioner. But we hope to equip people with the tools so that they can make those decisions and have that motivation to maintain or achieve their level of control for themselves.
Yeah, and nor do you want to. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't. I don't want to come and do your meals. I don't want to handhold you. Why? A, it's not my responsibility. It's your responsibility. But B, I I res- I respect humans, and I am not in the business of taking their dignity away.
Yeah, we all, I mean, you think so we've talked earlier, right, on neurotransmitters. When you create a goal and you achieve that goal, your body responds positively to that, right? You get that serotonin flood, you get that dopamine flood that helps you stay motivated to continue to maintain those better choices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And hopefully in the process gain a better understanding of what your responsibility can be, right? Or what your responsibility is for your choices for your own health. Yeah. Your physical health, your mental health. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people think probably, I mean, I hear myself talk sometimes and I'm like, gosh, you're kind of a hard ass. But here's the deal. My integrity is that, how do I say it? I don't believe in humiliating people and taking people's power away for me to feel better about myself.
Yeah.
And people are gonna be like, huh? When we think that we can tell people what to do and take responsibility for them and enable them and do all the things for them, which we think is helping, a lot of times we're doing that so we can feel good and we can feel like we're helping them. And meanwhile, we're taking power away from them. We're making them feel, well, we're not making them feel because they feel from their thoughts, but we're not supporting them to feel empowered.
Right.
In their own lives, right? Like that's why I cannot stand the model of just throwing money at societal issues.
Right.
Right? Like that makes people feel small and very small.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, that's how I run my practice, right? Is I try to educate folks, right? Help them be informed. Because I think, what? If somebody were to walk in the door and say, what, you need to take this or you need to do this because it's good for you. Who are you to tell me what I should and should not do? I will make that decision for myself. Thank you. Now, teach me or educate me or give me the information so that I can make a decision that makes sense for me. I'm open to that all day. Right. Yeah. And so I think that's, how we share with folks to give them that, opportunity, right, to take that power upon themselves and make those decisions that make sense to them.
Yeah.
But shedding light and showing people the difference between responsibility and fault, I think is really important. So I'm glad that we're talking about it today because I'm hoping that that this will show both sides of that coin, because we talk a lot about perspective. And, when we were talking about the 50-50 and the model and just, how you change what you perceive, right? And how we change those thought processes little by little will give us more tools and a better understanding at how, we can create those thought processes that will serve us.
Yeah. That'll help us flourish.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. That's what I got.
Yay. Thanks.
You got anything else?
No, I think that wraps it up for us today.
All right, humans, your challenge this week is to take full responsibility for your life.
Yes.
Yes, do it. It's the best decision you'll ever make.